exactly how was I able to take this specific Shopify store all the way up to $317,000 in sales at a 14x ROAS in a matter of 5 months. Now, there is no reason why you can't be achieving such numbers because I have personally done it. And the interesting thing about this store was that it actually kind of started from scratch. I'll be going over all of these things very shortly. But exactly how was I able to achieve such a feat with the Shopify store? Now, before we start talking about the ins and outs of the strategies, exactly what I did and so forth, let's start off with a brief introduction of this Shopify store. Exactly what kind of Shopify store was it and what kind of products was it selling? To be specific, this Shopify store was selling products within the automotive industry, meaning some small car parts, and this specific Shopify store owner was actually dropshipping these parts directly from US warehouses. So that is another dropshipping idea which you guys might want to look into. But they were a full-on automotive brand selling these car parts, and because they were selling these car parts, not necessarily the bigger items, but just those small ins and outs of a car to either improve its performance, upgrade it, and so forth, the overall average order values ranged anywhere from $500 all the way up to $2,000, even $5,000. In fact, the amazing thing about this specific Shopify store was that other brands who were selling similar products actually used to buy directly from this Shopify store. So that always helped boost the overall revenue for this brand. But this Shopify store, we personally started handling in around the months of October of 2021. And I say we because this Shopify store owner came to us under my Google Ads agency, Euro Marketing. But the original situation of the Shopify store was that it had done over $1 million in sales with Facebook ads, absolutely no Google ads in the play. However, a lot of these sales were unprofitable sales because this Shopify store did something extremely unique, and I might even make a video of exactly what the Shopify store did. If you're interested, leave a comment down below. But just to kind of keep it brief, this Shopify store used to hold contests on Facebook, and they used to run ads to these contests which would then drive results. It was a really neat idea, which is why they were able to do over $1 million in sales. Only downfall to that was they were really not that profitable. So in October, we started running Google ads for this account with no real clear goal in mind, because before this, the profitability was there, but not really at the scale the Shopify store owner wanted. And initially, this Shopify store, even though it had done over $1 million in sales, had a lot of problems that it came with. For example, this is one of the most common issues a lot of Shopify stores really have, and you might have this as well, but conversion tracking issues. If it was getting $1 in sales, it was either tracking $2 or it was not tracking any value at all. And it was pretty much a common scenario with Facebook ads. Another bad thing about the Shopify store was it actually had not installed Google Analytics. And it just is absolutely insane to me how a Shopify store can do over $1 million in sales with no Google Analytics installed properly. But these were small issues which we had to end up basically fixing and installing for the Shopify store in order for it to really begin working. And the same thing for Google ads. With Google ads, although there was an account running, although there were a few campaigns the Shopify store owner was really testing around with, again, conversion tracking issues, nothing was getting properly tracked. So the owner had no clear idea as to what the real sales value was with Google ads. But once we were able to really fix up all of these issues, then it was really a matter of just finding the right strategy. And I'm going to be going over the real strategy that we used for the Shopify store very shortly. But before we actually do that, I want to take you guys inside my computer right over here, over onto the analytics. So the Google Analytics for this account, where it mentions all of the campaigns that were running during that time period and are currently running as well. So let's go over the data before we actually begin to talk about the initial campaign setup, exactly what strategy we decided to go with, and so forth. So right here on my screen is the Google Analytics open for the Shopify store. We're looking at October 8, 2021 to May, today when I'm recording this video, which is March 25th of 2022. Now, the store, as you can see, the first time Google Analytics really started tracking anything was around October 25th, and this is when we had launched our initial campaigns. And this is a perfect example of exactly how Google Ads works. Initially, all the way from October up to maybe the end of November, the results were there, but the results were nowhere close to where the owner wanted to be. In fact, there were days when the owner was doing $2,000 in sales, $1,000, but overall, very inconsistent. And in fact, if we kind of look at it a little bit zoomed in, we will be able to understand exactly how Google Ads works. So October 8th all the way to the end of November is when we want to look at it. Overall, during this time period, it was still extremely profitable. Don't get me wrong. The initial strategy, which we ended up starting for this Shopify store, ended up being a big success, and I'll tell you guys exactly how we came up with this strategy. But for this time period, we spent about $3,787.93 to make back 50 sales at $15,513.11. This Shopify store is a perfect example of why you need to start doing high ticket sales in 2022 and onwards if you haven't already, but more on that later. As you can see, the revenue was there, but there were ups and downs and ups and downs. In fact, one day would be good where it was $1,800 in sales, and the very next few days it would go all the way down to $170. So this is kind of what the results were like for 1 month entirely. But the amazing thing is there is nothing crazy about these results, because this is exactly how Google Ads works. Initially, when the account is in the warm-up period, which this account was within the first 2 to 4 weeks even, the results were extremely high, extremely low. There was no kind of set barrier as to what the result would be the next day. In fact, if you did $2,000 in sales one day, you could possibly go all the way down to $60 in the next 2 days. And this is just how Google works. A lot of e-commerce store owners panic during this time period. This is also the time period a lot of these Shopify store owners end up quitting Google Ads entirely. If you are in this situation, don't worry, because as you see from this chart, this is just how Google works. But now moving on from October 8th all the way up to December 31st, this is when this Shopify store basically kicked off, and revenue, as you can see, basically increased overnight. So November 28th, we did around $113.63 in sales. The very next day, it went up to $1,096, but from that time period onwards, there was a lot more consistency in terms of the revenue. There was a lot more consistency in terms of the users coming onto the account. And this is nothing special that we did during this time period when it took that big jump. All that really happened was Google Ads started to become smarter. It started to realize exactly what this store sells, exactly who the ideal audience is, and the campaign started to show to that specific audience. Now, moving on from October 8th all the way up to the current time period, which is March 25th of 2022, we can see how the results have been since then. So since then, we have spent $22,031.71 to get back $317,639.76. If you divide this up, do the calculations, that is roughly a 14x ROAS. Now, I get it, these are absolutely dream numbers for a lot of those people who use mostly Facebook ads, TikTok ads, and so forth, even for Google ads. But the way that we were able to achieve these kinds of results is nothing out of the ordinary. First things first, let's see exactly how many campaigns were able to generate these sales. So really, to be honest, there were about just 3 campaigns bringing in majority of the sales. 2 of them were shopping campaigns. One of them was a search campaign. Now, this last campaign right here is not necessarily a campaign. It was just things the Shopify store owner was testing before we came into the account and before we actually started tracking things properly. So that is why you can see the cost as $0 for $14,000 in sales. But exactly what did we do to end up with the results like these? Now, talking about the initial strategy, there is nothing crazy that we really did. The first step, as it should be for every Shopify store, was to analyze the previous data. What we knew about this Shopify store was that it had done over $1 million in sales from other advertising platforms. That simply meant all of the products that this store was selling were proven products. They already had gotten a lot of sales. So whether the product was a winning product or not was already out of the question. Next thing we had to understand was whether we could use any of this previous sales data to start these campaigns. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, Google Analytics was not installed on this Shopify store. The beauty about Google Analytics is that there is a way to kind of import all of the data that Google Analytics has tracked previously onto your Google Ads dashboard, and then your campaigns can basically start from the get-go using this data. We did not have the benefit of this data because, again, Google Analytics was not installed prior to our start. So we were basically starting from scratch for the Shopify store. Next thing we had to do once we analyzed the back end, once we understood where the problems were. So we knew that the conversion tracking codes were all messed up. There was no Google Analytics. The basic setup was not done properly for the Shopify store. So that means what we knew was that this Shopify store, although it had done a lot in sales, had an extremely weak foundation. Our number one goal was to build a strong foundation. This was really in terms of setting up all of these conversion tracking codes, setting up the right accounts, connecting them to each other, and of course doing a little bit of keyword research, market research, understanding who the ideal audience is, who the right person who buys these products is. Because without this data, we would just be throwing those darts blindfolded, and that is equivalent of just burning your money. So it's always important to do all of the right analysis, all of the right strategizing before you really end up even launching those campaigns. So once we had all of that done, the next step was to understand whether the website needed any kind of work. And in this case, the website definitely needed a lot of work, specifically the product pages, meaning the titles and the descriptions. The images were great because they were clearly selling the product, but the titles, because this store was mostly on Facebook, were not properly search engine optimized. So we had to implement some SEO techniques on the titles, the descriptions as well. We had to do a lot of keyword research to figure out what kind of keywords majority of the people in this market were searching for. And the benefit of really selling high ticket is that you're often going to have a high barrier to entry, and that means not a lot of competitors for you. That was the main benefit for this e-commerce store. That is why we were able to achieve such amazing results. But just because you are in a competitive market does not mean that you can't get similar results. The strategy I'll be mentioning as to how we launch these campaigns should give you a clear idea as to how you can do it as well. But once all of these things were out of the way, once the product page was properly optimized, it was a matter of just thinking up a good strategy for the Google Ads account and basically to get it off the ground running while hopefully using some of the previous data. Now, the best thing that we could do was possibly upload the customer list that the Shopify store already had onto Google Ads, which is something you can do as well to create those remarketing audiences and then further use those remarketing audiences inside the campaign. So because we had that benefit, the strategy that we decided to go with for this account was the smart shopping route. Now, hold on. Before you go crazy and revamp your entire Google Ads account, revamp your entire strategy that you are using currently, hear me out, because there is a reason why we went the smart shopping route for this account. Normally for accounts with a similar kind of layout where there was no real data with Google Ads, no real Google Analytics installed or any of that sort, we would normally go with standard shopping and set our own personal bids. But because we were using the customer audience list that we had gathered from Facebook and a lot of other data, we decided to go the smart shopping route. And again, one thing that made us want to go this route is the high average order value. These products range all the way from the low margins of $50 a sale to $2,000 to $3,000 per sale. So because again, there was such a wide gap between the average order value, between the selling price per product, we had decided to go the smart shopping route and let Google Ads kind of assist us with finding the right audience for this product. Now, we didn't just go with the random smart shopping campaign, meaning we just didn't launch one specific smart shopping campaign. We did use a strategy for this, and the strategy that we used for the smart shopping campaign was, as you can see right here, we currently have 2 different smart shopping campaigns. These were launched initially during that time period when we just took over this account. Campaign number 1, which is the second one on this list right here, which is the one that generated $50,000 in sales at an $8,000 ad spend, was the campaign with products. So what we did is we went in, we analyzed the entire funnel, we analyzed all of the products, and we analyzed all of the data within the past year to see which products had gotten at least 3 to 5 sales or more, specifically those products which were already winning products for this account from other marketing platforms. And there were a bunch of different products, about 10 to 20, which this Shopify store had been selling and had basically found to be winning products. So we kind of took advantage of this and we launched all of these products inside of one specific smart shopping campaign. But we did not stop there, because although there were just 10 to 20 real winning products, there were hundreds of other products which were not necessarily winning products that we still wanted to test out to see if they could be winning products. So we launched this next campaign, which is the first one on my screen right over here, which has spent $12,000 to get back $134,891 in sales. And this was the campaign which was running all of those products which were not tested previously with Google and which were not within the second campaign right here on my screen. So this was kind of an addition to this campaign which we had launched, and to our surprise, this campaign ended up doing much better, about 3 times better, because it got about $134,000 in sales, while this one got about $50,000 in sales. So these two campaigns were absolutely crushing it. Smart campaign was the route to go with this ad account, and the way that we set up these smart campaigns was we did not set a target ROAS for these campaigns. So normally Google gives you the ability to check that box to set a target ROAS. We did not do that for this account because we wanted Google to fully control the bidding. We wanted Google to use as much data as possible that this account had gathered to go out and find us the ideal audience. Of course, this went extremely well for us because since then we were able to crack that 14x ROAS. Now, this third campaign I'm not really talking about much, even though they generated $117,000 in sales, and that is simply because it was a branded search campaign. For those of you that don't know what a branded search campaign is, I'll leave a link in the description below. Also, you can click on the top right to see exactly what a branded search campaign is. It is basically a campaign where other audience members search for the brand name itself and come onto the website that way. So this is a very generic search campaign. You should have if you haven't already, so that's why I recommend you check out that video. But overall, again, $317,000 in sales. But now that we've talked about exactly how these campaigns were launched, how far they have come so far, and how they've just been growing over time, I want to kind of talk about something called automation. Now, I'll save this for last because there's a reason why I'm showing this account on Google Analytics and not directly on the Google Ads account. The main reason is because we stopped working with this client around the end of December. Now, there's various reasons as to why we stopped working with this client. Some of them include unrealistic expectations as to how much the ROAS could be scaled, and also budget issues on the client's end where the client needed more money in order to run those contests that they had on Facebook. But I'm just gonna leave it at that without going too deep into the analysis. But since that time period when we started working in December, as you can see, the campaigns have done nothing but amazing during that time period. So looking at exactly when we stopped working with this client, which was around December 30th. So after that time period when we stopped optimizing this campaign, and with the owner really not optimizing this campaign at all because they have little to no idea as to how optimizations can be done. During this time period when these campaigns were not touched at all, the campaigns have spent roughly $14,264 to generate back roughly $253,922.69 back in sales. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that is pretty much some amazing ROAS. But exactly how was the campaign able to perform this way despite nobody really going in and taking care of it? And that is the beauty about smart shopping campaigns. That is the beauty about Google Ads. Initially, you are going to have a turbulent time period where you are going to be feeling a lot of stress. You're not going to be sure exactly what is going on because the results are going to be up and down, and you're going to be very hands-on in the account. But once Google is able to understand who your ideal audience is, once Google is able to know exactly where to go and find that audience, things become extremely easy and automated, and that is exactly what we saw with this ad account. Now, this is really not the case with standard shopping, because with standard shopping, you do need a bit of a more of a hands-on approach. But with smart shopping, it's a much different scenario. Here, as you can see, all the owner really had to do was just let the campaigns which we had originally started run without really doing much changes, maybe going in once in a while excluding the products, but all you really had to do was just add a brand new product. And with that kind of automation, you are able to achieve such kind of results. So to kind of conclude this video, there were a lot of different things that we basically came up with for the strategy part of the Shopify store. We were initially thinking about standard shopping to give it a try, but at the end of the day, we did come up with a strategy of just starting smart shopping, and that is exactly what you should be doing if you have a lot of data for your ad account. Now, I like to divide this into two different categories. Number one category is where you have a lot of data, specifically over 50 to 100 sales on the Shopify store as a whole. And the other category is where you have no data, where it's just a brand new Shopify store. If you're in the first category, like this Shopify store was that we did the case study of, by all means, give a smart shopping a try, see exactly how they work, and then let them automate and let them work on their own with minimal changes to the account, just like we did for this ad account right over here. But of course, make sure everything in the back end is properly set up, because if the Google Ads conversion tracking codes, analytics codes were not properly installed, we would not have been able to achieve these results, period. So you want to make sure all of that is set up before you go the smart shopping route. But let's take the second scenario where you don't really have any kind of data to work with. Exactly what should you do? And I'll be posting a lot of new videos on the channel about that. So that is one reason why you want to subscribe to this channel, to stay up to date. But for this scenario, maybe go the standard shopping route, just set a maximum CPC bid limit of about 40 cents to 50 cents and let the campaigns get data before you go the smart shopping route. But that is pretty much it. Again, this case study Shopify store was under my agency, Euro Marketing, which is a Google Ads marketing agency. If you're doing over $30,000 in sales, you want to take your Shopify store to the next level, just like I was able to do with this Shopify store, go on to the website at euromarketing.com and book a free call with me so that we can see if we're a good fit for each other. But again, just make sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash that like button if you found any type of value in this video, and I'll see you guys next time.